Today we were with Shawn Brown from the West Haven Group and Oakwyn Realty. Shawn is a extremely high-performing realtor, so he gave us an insight into the real estate market and here in Vancouver, as well as the brokerage business, what realtors do, how they do it, what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, and how do you be a top performer. We kind of went a ton past that and went much more personal with Shawn. He was kind enough to open up and become vulnerable about, what it actually means to be an A-type personality, the pitfalls and the downfalls of that. What's past success? What are the impediments to that? Is it all about efficiency? And the psychological developments that happen within a high performance person, and also the psychological just understanding of humans in general. So Shawn, thank you for coming on. And without further ado, here's a conversation. Shawn, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here after such a hectic day.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Shawn, how do you outwardly define yourself to the world? Give us some context.
How do I hourly?
Outwardly.
Oh, well, I feel like I try to present myself as a polished professional who works very hard, because that is probably one of the most important characteristics to my clients, I would assume. Mm-hmm. And I've learned over time to offset that with something that's equally, or probably even more important, which is being a warm, approachable person.
Matters.
Given the line of work that I'm in. So it's a balance between those two things. And of course, it depends a little bit on the client or group, because certain groups or clients will respond a little bit better to certain aspects.
How do you define yourself inwardly? So that's Shawn on the outside. What's Shawn on the inside? Who's that guy?
I would say it.
See,
I would say
everyone always stumbles on this when they're like, "Oh, me." We don't want to talk about me. We want to talk about professional me.
Right. Honestly, I'd say that that's a little bit in progress, because I haven't fully figured that out yet.
Ooh, the vulnerability. I love
there's many aspects that I'm clear on, and there's a number of aspects that I'm still not quite clear on. And as I get older, I've become more aware that I haven't quite figured out inside.
See, that's really interesting. So if you were to ask me the exact same question, I'd go, I have no clue, right? And it's so funny because our outward personalities are defined so quickly, and it seems like we jump into a silo, we jump into a box, which is like important. Society kind of needs us to be in a box to understand us, right? But inwardly, it's like this abyss of, well, it could be 100 different things.
But for you, when you say that you have no idea,
right,
you must be aware of certain aspects of yourself that you're quite clear on,
yes,
and that are solid, even if there are a number of other things that you don't feel clear on. So you must have some clues.
There's that. I think there's like understanding your core values,
right,
and understanding your identity are different. Like I'm solid on my values, and I've done a lot of work there to understand, what my personal operating system is, what the moral compass is, all these types of things. Now, crafting an identity from your values, an inward identity, that becomes tough, because for me, again, I'm always thinking about, I dislike things like I am statements, you know what I'm saying? Because I am a realtor, so I don't do that. Or I am a wealth management professional, so I wouldn't engage in Y, or I don't think with this methodology. Core to my identity, which I do know, is staying completely radically open-minded. So that's kind of led me to not craft an identity.
Yeah, I can certainly say that over the last few years, I've traveled quite a bit. And when I was younger, we didn't travel at all. And in being in various places with very different cultures, I've definitely seen some things that have made me question various parts of my own identity that I thought I was clear on, and that I thought was what I wanted. So there's that has sort of been part of beginning to question a few things that I thought for my 20s that I thought I was quite clear on.
Care to indulge?
I think that one example would be that I've defined in the past to myself, I've defined my sort of self-worth based on accomplishing certain things that are important to me, or certain goals that I've set that are important to me for each period of time. And I've beginning to question certainly I guess that those don't really create self-worth. They should really be independent of that.
Goals don't create self-worth. Sorry. Well,
achieving goals should not be the basis of one's self-worth.
Got it.
And that's been a big thing. That's been definitely a big thing that I've realized is not healthy.
Mm-hmm. So within all of that, you're in an industry like, I look at you and you say, oh, Shawn's very successful. How do you define success in your industry and in selling real estate? And it doesn't really have a ceiling.
Yeah. You know what? Rationally, the way I would define success in any industry, including real estate, would be, are you enjoying what you do the majority of the time? Are you happy most of your days? Of course, you're gonna have bad days, but are you happy most of your days? And that's probably a great if you're happy most of your days, you're successful. However, even in knowing that, that's not really how I operate. I'm very numbers based.
Because you're not that guy.
Exactly. I'd like to be that guy, but it's still not there at all.
Got it.
And so for me, it's how much have I sold this past period? What is my goal for this year? What is my goal for this period, this month? What is my dollar amount? What is this? All these different metrics. And that's what sort of causes me constant anxiety, because I always feel like time's moving by quickly, and I'm struggling to catch up or keep up or catch up, depending on where my sales numbers and various goals for that period are at. So I've tried to offset that with thinking, okay, well, with each of my clients that I've helped this past month or whatever, try to focus on that, because that's of real substance. But ultimately I revert back when I'm by myself to, oh my God, you're 3 behind and the month end is coming. You need to hurry up. And then the weight is, so it's definitely stressful.
So a couple of directions, like number one, what are the markers that keep that anxiety at bay? What do you need to say to yourself? Like, what are the triggers you say to yourself where you can kind of go, okay, no, it's okay. Is it strictly those numbers? That's it. We're hitting 4 or 5 homes a month. I have no idea what it is, but whatever it may be. And if we're behind that, like if we're not on pace for that, shit, the alarms are on, and here we go. Like, nose to the grindstone. Is that kind of the situation, or how do you define it to yourself? How do you keep it at bay?
I'll try to remind myself when I am in those periods of stress, what is most important. So I'll try to remember, you have a great group of friends, a great partner, a great clients, like the great people all around you all the time, among other things that I'm grateful for. But ultimately that comfort is short-lived, and then the weight comes back.
Of course.
So it's really, I haven't figured out how to actually see the bigger picture deep enough that it really sticks, because those superficial things, they're always very strong and they're always creeping back in.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, we have a lot of tools to deal with those types of things, right? I was watching the vlog you recently did with Mark at Peeled Media, and you were going through your morning routine, and you downloaded a meditation app. Was that what it was?
Yeah.
And you're like, hold on, I just need to sign up real quick. Best part in the vlog, by the way. Hilarious.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been meaning to. I understand that meditation would probably be a very useful tool, especially if you get good at it, to deal with all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I've tried, but the problem is I just find it so painful. Which I know is part of probably doing
part of the process,
but I just feel like the problem is every time I have the attention to go meditate, I think, well, why don't I just be looking at listings or looking at I could just spend that time doing work related stuff, and that'll provide me instant comfort. So it always gets trumped by work, which I know is not how it should be.
Right, because again, if you go back to what's the ultimate goal, and if the ultimate goal is happiness or defining success or whatever it is, and what you just said to me is that, well, actually going at listings and working is actually comfort, and meditation is not comfort. So what you're actually after is comfort, which all of us humans are. Like, we're constantly guilty of that. Why do workaholics work so much? It's because that's where we want to be. It has nothing to do with the work.
Well, yeah, that's true. And I think another thing is that when the calmest I do feel, or when I get asked me about keeping it at bay, what really keeps it at bay is when a sale happens.
Right.
then it's at bay for a bit. So because of that positive reinforcement for 10 years, it is so ingrained in me that if I really want to feel happiness or a little high, like an addiction, go get a sale. And especially if there's a few in a row or a big one, then nothing makes me happier. Including like my relationship, my whatever. Doesn't matter. Nothing.
Ooh, cloud nine. Yeah. But how long does it last?
That's very fleeting.
Hold on, let me ask you a question. Has it when at 10 years ago, did it last longer?
10 years ago, it lasted longer. I could get a good few weeks.
Oh, wow.
And now I am down to, like, probably like 30 minutes.
No.
It's so short because I'll be high and then I'm like, oh no, because the goals are pretty high. So it's like, oh, I'm still behind. I need to get going.
Right.
And so it's like, I'll be on cloud nine for that maybe 30 minutes.
It's so interesting with high achievers. You have your internal goals and your internal narrative that you're trying to stick to drastically, and then you have the world's goals and narratives and their projections on you. Like, I was looking at Shawn, shut the fuck up for 2 seconds. Like, you're good, everything's fine, go to Cabo, and you'd be like, well, actually no, Joss, I'm actually quite far behind in mine. But you're not living in the real world. Like, your world is not the real world. So how do you get to that point where, like, how do you gain context on your life? Like, how do you actually get context on your life and your sales numbers and your standard of living?
I think I'd have to be genuinely open,
right,
to get some context, and I can pay lip service, but ultimately I'm not genuinely open at this still yet.
Of course,
because I still, at my core, I use these things to define my self-worth and how I see myself, and that just has not changed. And I've even been through like 3 years of therapy weekly to sort of gain insight on this.
Of course.
And at the very end, we made good progress. But when I came to this, I had to tell him, I'm like, 3 years, and on this particular topic, I have just as firm of the same beliefs as 3 years back. I'm so sorry it's been a waste of time, at least for this, at least as it pertains to this topic.
So interesting, like how we intellectually understand like the psychological mechanisms that are happening in our head, but that doesn't change it. Right? Like we can know the mechanisms, but do we have control over them? No.
Well, I think also when you, if you look back, if you try to understand where something comes from, and so, which I've done, and I believe I have a clear understanding of when this sort of view started. And when it dates back to your childhood and was ingrained at that young of an age, it's difficult to truly change because it's so deep in your foundation. And that's why when a child goes through, if a child goes through a traumatic experience or something, oftentimes they remember it well into adulthood, that one instance, how big it was. Even if an adult looking at the situation could see it wasn't that big, to a kid, everything is much larger.
Of course.
So that's where I believe mine started. And that's why I think that changing it has been so difficult. Plus, I don't even know if I really want to change it because it's a driver. So it's like, I feel like that's a bit of a secret sauce. Keeps me going. So it's like, I'll tell my therapist, oh yes, I'd love to, I'm going to do what you say, I'm going to change, but I think I probably leave my appointment and be like, well, I'm back to my old ways. See you next week, back to my old ways.
See, that's so interesting. We have different like fuel sources, right? And so like a therapist or some type of healer or whatever it may be, okay, well listen, Shawn, you need actually to work through like your inner shadow, and you need to work through your early traumatic stress, and you'll be happier and life will be better. And you're like, yeah, like that makes sense. I get it. Work through it, talk through it. Okay, there's exercises for that. But like, you don't understand that, like, I don't know how good that fuel source of like happiness is, but this fuel source of like angst and OCD and drive and ambition, this ambition narrative that I'm in, I know that's a good fuel source.
Well, I know that I've gone through periods where I've gone short-lived periods where I've been really content or happy for whatever reason. And they're my least productive times. I might be happiest, but I'm definitely not getting as far ahead. So seeing that, it's like, well, part of me is like, do I really even want to be happy? Not really, because then all of a sudden I'll just get nothing done. I'll sit there content.
So like,
rather be miserable.
Value systems, like what really matters, what really, really matters. And to us, and it's like, well, who's to judge? Who's to judge on that? Like, and so for instance, like you say, all right, when I'm happy, so I have the same struggle like with myself. I'm like, okay, well, I can move really fast and like work myself to death essentially, and like that's fairly unsustainable. And I'll have like short burnout periods. You learn how to like get your burnout periods shorter and shorter and shorter. You get really good at being an idiot to yourself, as you know. And then I'll have moments of like, okay, well, no, let's go deep into a meditation practice, deep into, understand what the core fundamentals of like a daily routine are: meditating every day, sweating every day, sauna every day, all these types of things, cutting out time for relationships, all these things that like make life more meaningful, slow down, monotask, all these types of things, and I'll get there and I'll be more relaxed, more happy, but I'm looking at the pace of tasks being done, or I'm looking at the pace of numbers coming in, and I'm like, it just doesn't move as quick. And for me, and as do you, understand the exponential nature of time and the exponential nature of money. I'm like, okay, well, it's a speed game. This is really a speed game. And so, yeah, this may be a more sustainable route, but like we need speed right now. Yeah. So how do you come to terms with that? I have no idea, right?
I think, to me, in my mind, the solution is to get to a point that's good enough that you'll be less desperate.
Right.
Which, of course, the problem there is, for that, depending on the person, what is that point? And that point might be so difficult to accomplish that really you're going to be struggling for a good, 10 or 20 years, and then maybe you'll get it.
Absolutely.
So then, of course, you're then delayed to feel like you can finally relax a bit until you're ancient.
So then, do you think that's time wasted? Like, how do you live a good life then? Because now we're battling regret.
And that's a excellent point, and certainly one I think about sometimes, for sure. In the most recent few years, the way that there's been two things that I've tried to do to minimize that potential issue. One is to try to book enough travel in a year that I can't regret too little travel or too little experiences in that way.
Fill that bucket.
Yeah. So that at least is one. And that when I'm away, that is definitely the time where I'm by far best able to disconnect from work. Because here in Vancouver, work is everywhere. Everything I do is related to
every building you look at.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So that's one. And the second one is kind of like I make a goal of most things. I'll try to put a quota on, okay, like date nights or a going out night, like try to get one a month or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then at least mentally, I can't have too much regret because I hit the quotas, and therefore I know I couldn't have done too bad of a job in those departments.
Right. So you systemize it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Let's hop back to real estate.
Yeah.
Back on a global level, on a life level, because we're speaking on a life level, what's the ultimate goal? Like you say, all right, I have a certain amount of sales in a month and I'm trying to hit that. But like when we look at long term, you're still a super young guy. What's the goal?
That's an excellent question. In the last year, that's one I've been struggling with deeply because I love my job and I love my clients, and now that I feel like I've gained enough knowledge and experience over the last decade that almost every transaction I find, things may go wrong, but ultimately I'm so used to all the different things that it doesn't cause me too much stress. And I know I've learned all sorts of creative ways of fixing various problems. So, and I like that my level of experience is enough that almost any of my clients or all of my clients would definitely say that I'm a good guide and advisor and respect the opinion. Oh, sorry, I'm now just forgetting what you said.
I was saying, what's the ultimate goal?
Oh, yes. So I don't see myself ever leaving real estate because I love it so much. The challenge I'm running into is I only have so many hours. So I can't just once you reach a certain amount, say 4 deals a month for one person, you can't really do much more than that without truly running yourself ragged. So then how do you expand over past that? And also, there's another thing that I've kind of struggled with too, is that this business is not really scalable and it's not a sellable type of business. It's not like you've created a separate brand or entity that you can really build into something big.
And it's not a product. You
can't just scale a product. So you can't sort of work toward a sellout or work toward, continued expansion. So that's been something that's been the aspect that I've kind of struggled with. So what I have begun to think about, okay, well, is there any complementary businesses that I could start that wouldn't start spreading myself too thin because they're so complementary, where they may add additional income streams or allow me to explore other things in a sense, other parts of real estate. that might make me feel a little more, I guess, overall fulfilled.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of sidestepped it a little bit. Like, I understand what you're saying. Real estate is essentially a platform. Real estate is essentially a way to grow as a human, as a professional, to gain the networks and the capital accumulation, to then go off into different business industries or entities that are then scalable, and you actually can then withdraw your time a little bit, diversify your income. These things are nice. But still, like, what is it? Like, I know a big goal for a lot of realtors, sometimes it's like $100 million in real estate, selling $100 million in real estate, or like selling $1 billion in real estate. Like, do you work on similar parameters or? Okay,
so with getting to that, my current, up to this point, I've been selling about 3 a month, and I've been kind of stuck at that ceiling for the last few years. Wow. And this past year and this year, it's become ultra important to me to get past that ceiling and to 4 deals a month on my own. Right. And at that point, that's a volume that will keep me content, because at least you're selling something every week. So that'll give me that high that I need, because I know that I need that high regularly enough that I'm like in good spirits.
So it's totally not about the money for you.
No, slow down. So the deals tell me, okay, well, you know how to get clients, which is the hardest part. You know how to close deals. So that at least tells me you're good at this career. Going past that, then it's the income part. So, like the next milestone I'd like to reach would be 750. And then the main one I'd like to reach is, in a sustainable way, to be bringing in $1 million in personal commissions consistently, sustainably. And so that's the challenge, to get to those parts. And I feel like at that point, even if more isn't always better, once you get to a certain point, it's like as long as you can, acquire the things that you kind of want for your personality. Absolutely. Anything above that, you're not really going to get happier. So I feel like at those gross incomes that I'll probably be in a position to buy the things that I tend to gravitate toward. And I don't really know what else I'd need from a materialistic perspective.
They've done studies on it. Do you know what the number is?
Well, no, hold on.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I know what you're going to say, but that is not specific to Vancouver. Okay, so you tell me your number, and then I'll tell you what I think.
I love you. You came armed. You came equipped. Now the number was commissioned in the U.S. And it's $180,000 a year.
Oh, okay.
So after $180,000 a year, it becomes a law of diminishing returns. It's fractal essentially, and it doesn't. What I'm trying to say is, happiness is not correlated to increase in annual revenue.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah. The only one thing that I will say is that I think when it comes to the money or materialistic things, I think that some people are just more drawn to things that happen to be more expensive, and it's annoying. And unfortunately, I've always been like that. Yeah. And so all the things that I want are like 4 to 10 times more than the normal person versions.
Absolutely.
And I hate that, but that's ultimately what it always is.
Yeah.
And so for me, when it comes to that sort of, if I want to travel and stay at the places that I like, that I'm comfortable in, all those types of things, it just rapes me financially. So that's hilarious. A problem. Yeah. So, and that's always been a problem. I've always struggled with that. Yeah. But I've realized, well, if I want to if I want to be able to have fun, unfortunately, my fun is not cheap.
Yeah, I don't think it's about the money. I think it's about what the money represents, right? I think money is so interesting because it's our only gauge. It's our only good gauge for success and validation, right? And it's like, I don't even think it's about taste or personal preferences.
Actually, I can't argue with that. You're right.
I don't know
what it represents.
I don't know.
And obviously, when I mention those more expensive material things, those obviously represent. Well, they also represent. Right. If I own them, that obviously probably comforts me.
Of course,
because it's like, well, you own this, you must be doing
goes back to level of comfort. Yeah, no, I completely understand. So you have to have like a deep. So it's so interesting that those things register with you so readily, right? You're like, bang, 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 yep. Like, and you're able to categorize and able to understand like psychologically what's happening with yourself and with other people. Like, how much do you understand people at this point? Like, how much of your people skills developed? Like, you're dealing with high net worth individuals, you're dealing with, people that are buying real estate in Vancouver. And I don't know if you know, but real estate in Vancouver is not cheap. And so you've had to deepen your level of understanding of human psychology. I'm interested to know what the difference is between someone that, for instance, is buying $1 million home and someone that's buying perhaps a $3 million home or even a $5 million home. And I ask this because I have a thesis in that I think that money doesn't really change people. It just exposes people for, like you're going to have the same monetary habits, at $100,000 as you will at, maybe $500,000 with a few exceptions, right? How you deal with money will be the same. So my thesis in this, and maybe I should wait to say this, but I'm going to spit it out anyways, is that I think that the difference between the 500, the million, the 3 million, the 5 million, or whatever it is, it's just these people are just enabled. They're just enabled in different ways. I don't think the psychology of those buyers are different. Granted, I've never sold a home in my life. I have no idea what I'm talking about. How do you see that?
I would say it's kind of as a general rule, say homes over 2 million and then homes under 1 million, say. There are definitely some differences. Now, the psychology of the buyer in general is probably quite similar, but I've had to, or I've been learning to adjust certain parts of how I go through the transaction depending on the different clients. So for example, I've a few of the things that I've noticed are, in general, and of course there's always exceptions, but in general, over 2 million, I'd say that there's certain demands, like unsaid demands on how that person is treated, and the service levels. It's expected to be faster and more on top of it, which makes sense. But that's one thing. Whereas oftentimes under the million, it's a little more forgiving in that way. I definitely say, and this probably makes sense for obvious reasons, but if someone's purchasing a home over 2 million, it's most likely because they've been particularly successful in their career. I understand many people come from money, but in general, it's because they've been successful in their career, which probably means that in some ways they might be more intelligent, at least as it pertains to business and things.
Absolutely.
And so they tend to be, I notice that I have to really be on it because they tend to kind of know more just in general. And I've noticed that before. I personally prefer the clients over 2 million because I like moving fast and I'm very type A. So I'm right alongside. That's who I naturally gravitate toward. Whereas the under the million, I have to be a little bit more patient and be cognizant that I'm not almost pulling them along too fast in a sense. But I have noticed that as well.
What are the traits of a good realtor? I never bought a home in my life.
Actually, I'd like to add one more thing to that, which is a little bit interesting. And this is with all due respect, but ego, there's definitely more of that on the higher end. So that's one thing that you have to be respectful of if you want to work successfully with many of those people.
So how do you manage that? How do you mitigate that, for instance?
Okay, so for me, it's just having learned these things and knowing that if my ultimate goal is to have as many happy clients as possible who are my ambassadors and referrers, I need to be the one to pivot the way that I am and be the type of agent that they want. And then, so yes, I'm still me, but I mean, like I will make some adjustments depending on the client.
Of course.
So that's how I've learned to deal with it, is basically just give them what they want.
Nice. You said that. You shouldn't have said that. You said it the first way very eloquently. It was very nice. Long story short, I give them what they want, exactly. So maybe that's what makes a good realtor then, is the ability to not have your clients cater to you, but rather cater your services, your personality to the clients a little bit more.
To an extent, for sure. Yeah. I think also to be a good agent, I think one of the most important things is asking questions, but not just questions, asking questions and then diving deeper throughout the process, because I am someone who is genuinely really curious to hear about other people. I always have been. So I love asking people questions, even if I have nothing in common with them, even if I don't even find them interesting. There'll still be certain things that I will find interesting, or there might be something I might learn from someone. Absolutely. So I naturally gravitate toward asking a lot of questions and really listening. And in this line of work, it's very beneficial. But the things that you can learn, because a lot of times, like say I'm with new buyers, they may have a list of criteria That's one part of it. But there's a whole other part of it that they likely can't even articulate, which is many unsaid and subjective and emotional things that come about once we either start working together or once I ask certain questions. Why? So they may say, I want this. Well, why do you want that? What's the reason? Oh, because of this. Well, why that? And then it's like, oh, that's what's really behind it. Root. And now I can sort of understand more about them. And then I can start choosing properties that don't just meet the criteria, but resonate with some of those emotional aspects to those people.
Very cool.
And same with even on the list side too. There's, the same, in different ways, the same sort of thing applies. If someone, you know, why do they want to go about their sale a certain way, or what are their goals, etc.? Well, they'll say certain things, but you start diving deeper into some of those things and you learn, I don't want to say the real reasons, but definitely more of the, as you said, the root reasons.
For other professionals or other realtors that will probably listening right now, what's been most beneficial in terms of you building your skill set as a realtor? And what's been most beneficial in terms of just, sharpening your blade, but just like and personally developing yourself to a point where you could be a really kick-ass professional?
Two things. One is in the last couple years, especially the last year. At first I was scared to ask, but now I actually ask every time. When I have a client, whether they're always happy, but I mean, like if someone's unhappy about something,
right?
I will always ask at the end of the transaction or during, how do you, I'll say like, so you're happy with your new place or whatever, you're happy with our results, but let me ask you, is there anything that happened during the process that you feel could be better, or that could have made things smoother, or anything? And I'll say, like, be completely honest. Honestly, I just want to keep improving. So I need constructive feedback. Otherwise you're not helping me. So don't try and shield me from anything, because actually you're not helping me in that way. And I've gotten some good feedback. I've had clients we'll get together for coffee and they'll have made a list. Of ideas, and even some of them will like actually make lists for just new ideas to my business. And I found that to be pretty useful, because that's coming right from the people that you serve. And then another has been, and this has been in the last year, I've asked various agents, actually no, this is more in the last few months, but I'm trying to do it every couple weeks. I've asked a number of agents that I respect, can I take you out for lunch? I really respect what you've done in this way, in this industry here, and I'd love to ask you just a few questions about it. I know you're super busy, but I will be prepared and I'll take as little time of yours as possible. So I've gotten some good things there, because those are people who are doing better than I, at least in one way in this industry, and I like to get their insights. Feedback.
Yeah. So and radical honesty with yourself probably as well, right? Like taking that feedback.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm the first to admit that I may have some strengths, but there's a horde of weaknesses, and I would love to be able to improve as many of them as possible. So I'm definitely open to learning things for sure.
So one of my favorite things to do is like blow things out of the water, like in terms of like, all right, we had a transaction, we had a business deal, we had whatever it was, ex-partners, ex-girlfriends and boyfriends. Hey, listen, what was really horrible? What was mediocre? And like, honestly, like, we're done. The transaction's done. We're finished. How can I improve? And then what I love doing is like, then putting that wide out in the open, like at the point of, well, you still haven't improved. You've just gotten the feedback. You still haven't improved. All right. I'm admitting, I'm putting on the front page or whatever it may be, X, Y, and Z I need to change. Okay. I'm self-absorbed and I'm too goal orientated. I don't know. And then going, all right, now I'm going to be super public facing about that. Like, and I don't mean like you're posting on socials or whatever, but just like owning it and not being afraid to put it outwardly. And then having the confidence in that. Like, the reason why I can do that is because now that you've told me, I have the confidence that I'm going to change it. And I'm going to start at day one of the journey, I'm going to put it out there, and whenever it ends, whenever I deem that I've conquered that or whatever it may be, I'm going to put that out there too. But just so you can see the contrast. Like, I love that type of shit. Like I recently started training for like striking and boxing and MMA and stuff, and I'm the worst, but I'll put it out there. I'll put it on socials. I'll put me just being complete trash out there, because I have complete confidence that, like, give me 3 months, give me six months, whatever it may be. And that, as a young person, has been the biggest tool in me garnering respect from the older generation. Just having that ability to do that. And I say that to someone like yourself, and you'd be like, all right, well, I'm 10 years into my career, but into your life, how old are you? 30s?
35, yeah.
35. So at 35, say this is a 100-year game, because it probably is. It might even be longer. You know, you're not even 60% or you're not even 40% of the way through yet, right? So it's like, what really matters? What really matters? And that's why I asked that earlier question about, regrets, right? Anyways, I circle all that back. Quick little tangent. I apologize. I do these things. You said you go out and you reach out to other professionals in your space. Who are those other professionals in your space? And what are the qualities that you look for in a super high quality realtor to those people that you're reaching out to?
Right. Well, usually their at the very basic, usually their sales results have to be strong.
Of course.
But as further than that, it's someone with strong sales results that's also particularly talented at least one component. I haven't really most people cannot be truly good, like particularly like competitive advantage good at more than like one or a couple things.
Right.
So it's identifying a few people that have one trait or skill or something that I note might be kind of part of their superpower in a sense, at least as it pertains to this. And it's usually that I kind of like to ask about.
Get underneath the hood a little bit.
And some of it is I can't necessarily just learn, but it's still I always come away with at least one thing they said that really hit home in a way and would affect me in some way. Like that would cause me to action something or cause some attitude on something to shift significantly. So that's why I always find it valuable.
What's your superpower?
Actually, you know what? I was actually asking a friend recently. I was saying, I don't know if I'm actually good at anything. Like I can work hard and stuff, but I don't know if I have any talent.
Yeah.
And his response was, well, I'd say it's your work ethic, your sense of humor, and your ability to take feedback. So I was like, well, that's not really a talent.
No talents there.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, fair enough. I don't have any talents, and it's been confirmed. But if those are my three things, then I guess I'll just work on those. So to be honest with you, I actually don't know. I would say one thing, and that's that before I got into real estate 10 years ago, I was a personal trainer for a few years, and I actually loved that job. And part of the reason why I got into real estate was because when I was a personal trainer, my favorite part of it was how personal the relationships got. They were very not surface; they got deep.
Right.
And when I was shadowing an agent. That actually was my personal training client.
Wow.
I noted that the relationship, because buying a place can get stressful and there's oftentimes all sorts of personal stuff wrapped up in it. I noticed that the relationship in many cases would not be superficial. It would become more personal. And so I thought, well, I love the personal aspect here and I'm really good at building that efficiently, but building it. I like that in this career, it appears that that's another way for me to have that. And with my clients, I like it. It's not like we get together and talk about weather. When we're together, even if it's limited time, we'll discuss relationship, we'll discuss money stuff. I'll try to get more personal because I want to connect with them. And I can usually do it with almost anyone. And I don't find that a lot of my client relationships are superficial. Like they become more friendship.
So every professional in the world would like to say that, right? Like in terms of like, oh no, like we have deep connection with clients, and maybe it's true or maybe it's not. But a lot of people will hear what you just said and they'll go, okay, like I get it, but how?
How, you know what? How is, I think it's not being afraid to start asking those questions that dive deeper, even as they become more personal. And I think that not everyone can do that because some people, if they were to ask a personal question, they would ask it in an awkward way or whatever, and it'll make it awkward. But I find that I don't feel at all awkward asking about someone's marriage issue or something, if it's the right person. But I'm always very careful with my words and I sort of tailor it to that person. So I tend to find that when I do start getting personal like that, I don't usually have someone say it's none of your business or, usually they will just sort of open right up and we'll keep chatting. So I don't think that everyone can do it, to be honest. And maybe it's learned, but I do think it's a bit of an art.
Absolutely. It's an art. Yeah, for sure. So how did you learn that? Like, I get it. There was some personal training there. Now you're in this business. What was before that? Like, give me the story. How did you develop?
I think it was a combination of maybe a few things. One is not like I said earlier, the genuine care about the general interest in someone. When someone can detect that you're genuinely interested in them, most people don't often in a day experience someone who's like really engaged in them.
Right.
So, but everyone likes that.
Everyone wants that.
So if you genuinely are right off the bat, they're going to detect that, and they're going to be way more open, because most people want to talk about themselves to someone who truly wants to listen.
Of course.
And who's asking the questions and keeping them going. Prompting
you.
So that would be one. I think the other thing is that I don't like networking type events, because I don't like that superficial stuff. So I find that when I'm there, I really perform badly. And at this point, I sort of just avoid them. Yeah. What I like doing when it comes to my building my basic business development, it's getting together for a lunch or coffee or dinner, and it's having a good hour and a half chat
going in.
And again, it's not, what do you think of this delayed spring? Yeah. It's not that. It's like, getting into it more.
Of course.
So I think it's that as well. And then I think the last thing is that I find asking certain questions a little bit entertaining. Like if I ask something that's personal, that's almost inappropriate, I find it a little bit entertaining, and I like to see the response. So unfortunately, my sense of humor will usually make that okay. Yeah. So then I find it, but then when that happens, usually even if we have a laugh over the inappropriate question, it usually does set the stage for other follow-up questions.
Right. It's an art. It's a fucking art. Yeah. There's no way. There's no rhyme or reason. Like, it's all intuitive. It's all in the moment too, right?
And everyone's different. So it's like you can't ask everyone. Some people you can ask totally inappropriate questions to, and they get delighted that they can even chat about that. Yeah. But then other people, you have to kind of go in a little bit more gentle way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah. It's great to hear that you take that approach to networking, because for me myself, I despise that stuff. I'm like, you're gonna meet a ton of people. You're gonna have access to a bunch of people. I already have access to all of these people because of LinkedIn. I don't need access through a networking event. I don't get the purpose of that. And maybe it's because I'm just weird and construed and have this own little idea and live in my own world. But I don't see the purpose of that, because I don't see you're going to a situation where everyone else is asking, is trying to take. You're going into you go to a networking event trying to take. You're not giving anything in any situation. It's just a room full of takers, which is fine. You have to be a taker. I'm not, downing that at all, but I'm just forming genuine connection in those situations is going to be extremely difficult. I don't care how good you are, right? Yeah. And if you do go to that networking event and you do zone in on something, you ever go to a party or a networking event and you spend an hour and a half, 2 hours talking to one person.
Oh, that's always me.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. And I don't feel guilty about that in the slightest, because that's where I want to be. I don't give a damn about all this shit, right? I want to be here with you. So it's just I take the exact same approach, where I'm just that's cool. You guys do you. I'm going to headhunt, and who do I really, really care about? Who do I really want to know about? Who am I most curious about? And I am calling you, right? And I have a cheat code for that, because I have this podcast, which is great. Total cheat code.
Yeah.
I
think some people, the people who are good at networking events, at least in my line of work, would probably be someone with a bigger personality that almost everyone is drawn to, where they don't really have to go deep, but in that 10-minute exchange, the other person immediately is drawn to just their energy and personality, even though they really haven't discussed anything of value.
That's a good point.
And that person can then work a room, and by the end of the networking event, they've spoken to 25 people, and in those little snippets of time, their personality was magnetizing enough that those 25 people all remember that person.
That's a good point.
And think, I really like that person. That's who I think is, if you have that ability, then you could probably make good progress with networking stuff. But I mean, I don't have, I feel like I'm likable, but I mean, I just don't gravitate I don't want a 10-minute conversation. I'm not going to learn anything interesting. I'll just be bored. Yeah. So it doesn't, I just don't like it.
Yeah. For sure.
And I don't like the same question or same few topics over and over again.
Right.
It's just
redundant. And I understand. But there's still so much value to being the shining light in the room. Yeah. Right? There's so much value to that. Yeah. But it's I mean, for me personally, I don't really care to be that shit. I don't know, it just doesn't do it for me. It doesn't get me high. It doesn't get me high. And that's fun. That's all great. Being on stage is great. It's fun. But for me, it's does it give me internal value or deep value? No, not really. Does it provide some value to my business plan or my professional life? Yeah, probably. But it's just where my values are, and what buckets am I trying to fill ultimately? Yeah. And for me, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm trying to say. You when I was digging into you a little bit, I know that you used to operate a brokerage, or you used to have a small team. Is that right?
Yeah, I did have a brokerage for about 4 years.
Okay.
And the reason I did that was initially prior to that, I was at Remax and I had an idea for sort of a real estate related side business that I was interested in, and Remax wouldn't let me do it, and so I said, well, basically, fuck you, and then went off into see, well, what is starting a brokerage? What does that look like? And I looked into it. It seemed doable, so I just jumped right in, did the licensing, and just sort of made it all work. And unfortunately, that particular business that I was interested in, I learned I didn't have any interest in once I got going with it. So then I was like, oh, well, I'm stuck with this brokerage without that business anymore. But I'd already jumped around a few times before, so at that point I thought, okay, you're just going to stay put, because your clients are probably thinking, what is wrong with you? You're always moving every year.
Of course.
So I just committed to that and stuck with it for the 4 years until I decided that it's just too inefficient. I wasn't going to do anything actual with that brokerage. So then I changed over to my current one, and that's it for now.
So you were building it. Do you have a team of realtors of that? Like, how does that work? I know nothing about this.
So at that time, I could have taken on licensees, and I could have opened up an office. I could have done all sorts of things, because I had my brokerage license. I was a managing broker. So I was set up, at least from an administrative and licensing perspective, to do that. But I haven't really had an interest since I got into real estate in managing realtors, because there's many great ones, but there's a lot of them that are not amazing, because the barriers to entry aren't that high. And so I don't want to be babysitting and trying to sift out some of these people. I just didn't have interest in managing that particular group. Now with a team, I have a small team now within my brokerage, and our team name is the West Haven Group. So that's the name for our team within the Oakwyn Realty Downtown brokerage. And there are many teams that grow to be very large. There's many teams that are bigger than many brokerages. So
interesting how that works.
And it's also interesting too, because the way the industry is evolving, there's some brokerages that have a power team within, and that power team is basically the only reason that brokerage can survive. So if that power team leaves and takes 60 agents with them, that brokerage may be left with, that brokerage may go under. So there's some teams, like I've even heard the term teamerage, which is basically a combination of the words team and brokerage, where a team is so powerful that they're ultimately as powerful as a brokerage. So it's interesting. It used to be the big, Sutton or Remax, Royal LePage, whatever, they were the big brokerages, but that seems to be evolving away. And now teams are building and taking on more power. And there's hyper local brokerages opening up in every major city or community. And oftentimes those tend to do really well in a community because they're a brand that's associated with that location.
So how are you moving forward in this ecosystem now?
Well, see, that's a good question. I have been speaking to a variety of agents about how their team works. I only have one agent right now and then one full-time assistant. And I don't feel like I have clarity at this point on exactly how I'd like to build a team, or if I want a larger team. I'm not sure yet. Because what I've noticed is that with some teams, they're large, but when you break down the average amount each person's working, or the average number of deals each person is doing, it's not impressive. Even though as a team, the team lead might say, oh my goodness, we sell blah, blah, blah. Well, when you say divided by 18, it's like, that's not impressive per agent. And so I've noticed that there's a number of teams that probably don't really bring about that much extra profit for the team leader who started it, especially given that he or she is probably training and mentoring and doing all that stuff. So I don't know. I've seen some teams where they really have it down pat and there's a reason why it works. And I've seen other teams where I think it's ultimately just ego and really it's just not, I don't really see the point of it.
So what I'm hearing is it's inefficient.
It can be inefficient, but there are some team leads who know exactly what they're doing and their system is set up to really make the numbers work. And I have seen that side as well.
So how do you create a high performance team? Twofold. One, in general, speak to characteristics if you can, and two, specifically in your industry.
Okay, well, if you can build excellent systems, platforms, all sorts of stuff that other agents can benefit from.
Sorry, not to cut you off. When you say systems, you're talking workflows, client generation. What are you talking about?
All.
Okay.
There can be so many different things to get clients, maintain relationships through transactions, all those different things, all sorts of processes and sort of mini systems within. So if you build a really effective, complex whole system that is a combination of all sorts of mini systems within each category, then that's of value to other newer agents or agents who have not been able to build that. So you can then bring them in, they can benefit off that. And then presumably any business that you can give to them, you take a cut for it. Many team leads, from what I understand, they might like the idea of mentoring and teaching. So that can provide them with value. So if they're providing access to systems or marketing stuff and they like doing the mentoring and they're taking a cut of that agent stuff, then it can be a win-win.
Well, unless it's a net negative in terms of business. I mean, like mentoring, yeah, in the long run, it's great. If that person works out in the short term, it's kind of wasted time. So
you're right. And so that's why some team leads, I've known some who did have a team and then said, well, you know, I made the same or more when it was just me to focus just on my stuff and just pumping through deals with my assistant or whatever. And so they ditch the team and then just go back to their own thing. So it kind of depends. But then I can think of one example in my head where he has set up his system, his team, such that he brings in the business, but aside from that, he's hands off and his clients know that then the team takes over. So he does the one aspect that he likes and then everything else that he doesn't have an interest in, the team does. And then he takes likely a significant amount from that. And so ultimately, and that is a little bit more scalable because he can bring in as much business as possible.
Of course.
And then if he has too much business, all he has to do is add a team and then take his, say, 50% or whatever. So that he has it down where there's a little bit of a scalable element to it.
So,
but
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, but the downside to that could be that not all client types are okay with hiring a main agent and then ultimately working with a more junior agent for the majority of the experience.
I understand.
So there's that may limit what type of clients you can get.
And ultimately hurt the business. Now, again, if we're talking about numbers and the business and high efficiency and high performance in that field, we're not talking about growing people or mentoring people or anything like that. We're not talking about that. When you're in your mind, in your just thought space and how you're thinking about this, I know you're probably still in the blueprint phase and sketching things out and just thinking about it, conceptualizing it. What does the highest performance team look like in realty? What does that look like? How is it the system where you go out, you bring in business, and you have the juniors then go through the paperwork in that process? What does that look like?
No. I don't think there's not a right answer there because I've seen and I've been told from other agents that are experienced that you can have different team structures or even totally different agents both achieve very high results and fall into the category of high performance, yet the way they go about it is completely different. So I don't believe there's a right answer. I think it's really just whatever style you choose or gravitate toward, you do that well. And you stick with it and you're hard work, consistent and intense with it with respect to work ethic. And over time it will, reward you.
How do you think about high performance personally? You strike me as someone that is a high performance person, and as someone who's watched your vlog, I understand your habits a little bit. How do you think about high performance personally? How does that? Is it valuable to you simply in that it's going to produce more net output in your business, or why is that even important to you? Why do you think about it so much, and why is it in your headspace? Like you seem, and I'm projecting onto you, so please stop me if I'm wrong, but you seem to be someone that's optimized many different facets of your life and work in a space of high performance. Why? And what does that actually mean to you?
I think ultimately it comes down to there's a few different categories of things in my life that I need to self-actualize within in order to be happy.
What are those?
Well, certainly it'd be work. It would be generally my fitness and the ways that matter to me. And then relationships. Those would be my main three. And so I can't be happy if I don't feel like I'm self-actualizing in those categories. And I know when it comes to self-actualizing, it varies from person to person. So for me, I can say, okay, what is self-actualizing with work? And that would be primarily the numbers that I mentioned. Right. And I can say with fitness, what is self-actualizing? Well, it's a certain weight, it's a certain body fat percentage. It all comes down to numbers. And if I'm not there, then I'm not happy because I'm failing at what my baseline should be in my mind. And then when it comes to my relationships, you can't really measure that by numbers, but do I feel like I have a tight relationship with all the people that matter to me? And if something's getting weak, then it bothers me, I need to fix it. But it ultimately comes down to, do I feel like I'm reaching what I feel is my capabilities within each category at a particular point in time?
Do you feel like you're limited in your self-actualization process in life by the level of OCD that you have
100%.
in each one of those things?
100%. When you're focused on those things that I've mentioned, that's kind of takes up the majority of your space. There's opportunity cost. So there's probably I know there would be many different ways that don't get improved upon because there's no attention being paid to it.
Absolutely.
And that down the road could cause regret. I guess my hope is that I can reach a certain point in these areas where I finally feel like, okay, well, you've made it in a sense. And then you can maybe get a bit more perspective and open your mind to other things that are lacking. But right now I just feel like I'm desperate to get those done.
What was that point? Was that exact point you're just talking about right there? What was that point 7 years ago for you? What was that point 3 years into the business?
Well, admittedly, the numbers keep increasing.
Of course.
So they do keep increasing, but I feel like I sometimes have friends will ask me, well, it's never going to be good enough. But the thing is that I do feel like at some number, and I feel like I know I've spoken to enough high producers to have a good idea of what baselines you're into the category of top producer. So yes, you can always sell more, but ultimately it's sort of like, I feel like it was like when I was in university. As long as my report card had A's, I was fine. Yeah. Even if it was A minuses, I didn't really care in university. So whether it was an A or A minus, it really didn't matter to me because as long as I could say I had straight A's, then I felt like I made it, like I mastered university. And when I did, I never, at that point, I never cared about trying to work for an A plus because it just seemed inefficient to try to work so much harder for that. But it was just getting to that baseline that I felt was sufficiently impressive to myself. So I feel like similarly, in real estate, it'll be the same thing. Once I achieve that, which when it comes to volume, 4 deals of my own per month. Yeah, I can try to work for 5 or 6 or whatever after that point. But ultimately, I'd consider myself a high producer. I've mastered the career. In the ways that matter to me, and I'll probably be content. Well, content at least with that element of that career.
I get it. But what if, for instance, like you talk about opportunity costs, you talk about the cost of high performance, because there's a cost to high performance. People don't understand that. Like you are most definitely foregoing happiness, enjoyment, fulfillment, and other areas of your life that, frankly, just not as important to you, right? Now, what if that baseline is like, again, we talked about your reality and the reality of the world. What if the reality of the world is bees and you're now essentially living in an own superficial world that's not real, but is most comfortable to you? However, you're not most efficient. Have you ever turned the tables on? Because if it's about efficiency, and I think it truly is, what if most efficient is a bee?
Most efficient is probably a bee. However, if I look at B,
we don't like B.
Well, it might be the most efficient, but I mean, like, I'm not impressed with any of what I'm seeing.
Of course.
In a sense. So I don't feel like B is even an option because in my mind, it's like you bees need to realize you have a problem and you need to start struggling yourselves at fixing your problem.
Right. But again,
so I can appreciate that the B is objectively more efficient. I can see that, but I can see it in one sense, but then I think it's wrong in the other sense. So,
well, at the end of the day, it's what matters to you, right? At the end of the day, and like, dude, I get it, and like, I think as someone that has similar outlooks on like performance and whatnot, I get it before, not because I like getting it before, it's because it's what's most efficient. Like you said it in your vlog, where it's just like, we have super inefficient hours at the end of the day because our willpower is exhausted. And we have super efficient hours at the start of the day. So let's maximize the ones at the start and cut the bullshit at the end, period, right? And like, I get that, like, I really do. But I think when we zoom out more big picture, it's just like, what matters? Like, is there like a universal truth in like how life should be lived, or how your life should be lived, or how we go through this like human growth experience. Like, is there fundamental truths to that? And like, is there like an actual peak? Is there a nirvana, a peace, fulfillment, or whatever it is? And shouldn't we just want to get there earlier? And if getting there earlier is the goal, and again, I'm making things up. If getting there earlier is the goal, then you need to get past this stage of like being this narcotic, like A needs to be a fucking A, or get it out of here. And like, dude, I can say it to you with confidence because I am that way, right? And I understand. So it's like, if the goal is like living a good life and being fulfilled and reaching that level of happy retirement, or I don't know what it is, then, and if we reverse engineer that, to get to that point, we need to get past this stage as quickly as possible. So going on that thinking, doesn't it just kind of make you want to turn around and go like, fuck, like, yeah, I'm performing like wow, but is this the most efficient way to the end goal?
Right. Life, life could probably be simpler and probably be easier if you do kind of find a nice balance and just only work toward what you really need and not these other things. But I just think that's boring. Like, it might be nice, and I see it. Like, I have family members who I believe have that. They have a nice balance on all sorts of things. They have a great little family and friends, the whole thing. But and I'm around them every holiday, and I see. But I mean, like, I look at a number of things there. I think their careers are boring. I think that their careers have been stagnant for 20 years, but we have different views on a career. I understand. Me and them. So I don't know. I'd rather just be burnt out and miserable and continue on looking for my constant highs than being the balanced and content. I'm just too boring. So, and it's too like mediocre, even though that sounds rude. It's just too mediocre in my mind, even though I respect that it's healthy and nice.
What's best for them.
Yes.
I get it. And that's not to say their way is wrong. It's just a different way that's not for you. Excuse me as I draw this parallel, but any athlete or any drug addict would say the exact same thing. Because that's what we are, Shawn. We're drug addicts in one way or another. And we may be very healthy in our habits and not actually using drugs or whatever it may be, but in terms of we are going after dopamine hits. So when I'm talking to an addict or something, I say, listen, you really shouldn't take that drug, whatever it may be, because of X, Y, Z. You know, that makes logical sense to me as someone who doesn't have those problems, right? And now as someone who's sitting across the table from you and has those exact same problems, I ask, why should we wean ourselves off of these dopamine hits of high performance?
Okay. So firstly, I know that I'm already aware that I'm a drug addict.
100%.
And I've known that for a while. However, the thing is that if me getting my high means that I've just helped a client,
right?
And I know in my mind, there's not that many realtors who are good as me. So that means that I've really helped them, and they could have been with someone else doing something less savvy.
And probably losing money and not doing a good deal.
Exactly, those things. And I'm also getting a payout that allows me to take a step forward financially.
And help more clients.
It's like I get my high, but then at the same time, I've helped someone. And at the same time, I've taken a step back in sort of my, being responsible, i.e. making money and moving forward that way. So like there's too much good.
There's too much
to try and like minimize it, even though I know that from a mental health perspective, there's all sorts of negatives. But I mean, like, I can handle those. I'll just stick with, I just want my highs. And then there's these other good things.
I get it. I'm waiting for someone to convince me that there's truly a truly better way.
No. I've had many friends try to convince me and give me good arguments, and even if I say, I totally see what you're saying. Yeah. I understand that's sinking in. I'll hang up and be like, oh God, bullshit. so, and I have some smart friends who are articulate, and I don't know. I don't agree.
I get it. No, I completely get it. So I love it. And thank you for playing devil's advocate with me a little bit. I do appreciate it. So when we talk about a little bit more in terms of goals and why, and we talked a lot about the why, and it seems to me like, why doesn't Shawn build a team, like build a large team? Like, it seems like you understand what a high performer is. You understand what it means to be successful in this business. You understand scalability, which will ultimately give you the things that you want in life, which is, more financial resources, but ultimately more time and more freedom to do other things or other business ventures, which will fill with work or whatever, but having the ability to do that, it just seems very obvious to me where I'm like, okay, this guy should really truly build people and build a team. But it doesn't seem like you're moving too much in that route, and maybe I'm wrong.
I think it's because I totally see your point, and I do believe that the systems that I built so far, especially in the marketing realm, and the constant kind of education of evolution that I'm trying to go after, I think I could provide a lot of value to a team. So it definitely might be around the corner. I think the only reason it hasn't become more of a thing in my mind is because I still feel like I'm figuring a few things out, and I feel like I shouldn't be committing to these people when I'm still not fully clear on everything, in a sense.
Okay.
Like I know I like real estate, and I you know,
right.
but I don't know if the next step is, for example, would the next step be taking on, say, 4 team members, helping them, and hopefully financially it makes sense that I'm getting something from them too?
Yeah.
Or do I keep things as they are, max out at my 4 deals a month, but then begin getting into the new build or renovation space again, which I have experience in? So if I'm comparing financially, so say one makes me an extra couple $100,000 or whatever a year, the other one does too, which one do I prefer? More now mentorship of these people and more real estate, or working alongside a designer and whatever on a different type of business that I like? That's very complementary. So I'm not sure, but I can't do everything. I can't be, I don't feel like you can do everything and do it really well before you start dropping balls. So I feel like you got to be, I'm just trying to be a bit careful as to what is the next best step.
I think what I'm trying to get to here is that I think that you probably could do everything, and you actually probably could do everything like very, very well. But I don't think you do everything perfect, right? And I think that's what really matters. And when you talk about to you, where it's just like you talk about yourself and you're like, well, I haven't really figured, like there's a couple systems that I haven't figured out like completely, and like, but I think that again, and this is a situation of like maybe the good being the perfect being the enemy of the good enough, and whatnot. And when it turns like when we again think big scale, so it's like I think that maybe I'm kind of projecting myself on you a little bit, so it's not me, but for me, it's like I can't really build a team because I'm not bulletproof and perfect. So I need to be bulletproof and perfect before I make 4 other people that are bulletproof and perfect around me. And on top of that, humans aren't objects. They're not systems. They're humans, and humans are deeply flawed. So I don't think I could even perfect those humans and build perfect pictures of high performers in the world. So that seems like a losing proposition to me. I'm probably just not going to do it.
You're definitely right, and I can say that like I see other teams and I look at what they're offering to their juniors, and I'm like, hey, I already have substantially more than that to offer.
Absolutely.
So I already see that, and I already have a number of newer agents who call, unfortunately, more than I want them to, with questions at every one of their deals. So even though they're not on my team, I'm already doing the mentorship anyway.
And not getting the return.
So so I'm not getting any return. So I can see that stuff. I feel like I'm getting closer to just more clarity on what I want the next 10 years to look like. It's more just a choice of, well, what businesses do I want to add to the mix, and in what order?
Got it. What order is most efficient? I'm just speaking from me, man. Like,
what order is most efficient, and what order is sort of the one that's going to give me the most enjoyment first, and then So there's that,
and is most exponential.
Yeah, exactly. And there's that too.
Fuck. Systems, plans, blueprints. I get lost in this shit for days. Okay, I get it. What about marketing? And because you're very unique in how you've done this, and we have to wrap up pretty quickly here, but I do want to speak about this a little bit.
Yep.
Why are you taking this approach? Maybe for those that don't know, what is your approach to marketing and selling a house? And again, personally branding yourself and how you put yourself forward in the world through social media and all this type of stuff, and some of the work you're doing with Peeled or whatever it may be. Why take that approach? And you've clearly decided that it's most important and most exponential. Why?
Okay. There's 14,000 realtors in our region.
Wow.
There's tons of them.
What's the region?
Lower Mainland.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you got to stand out.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm naturally, like my degree from UBC Commerce is in marketing. I have always worked alongside a branding graphic design person because I love branding. Like even though I'm not a designer and I can't do it from scratch myself, I love being a part of those things.
And West Haven and Oakland is very, very well branded. So hats off to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So because marketing I'm already so drawn to, that's part of the reason why I decided or gravitated toward making that an area of specialty. Now, marketing is moving so quickly and evolving so quickly, so it's tough to keep up. But I will say that the vast majority of real estate agents are are way too behind, and the chances of catching up are
Slim
low.
to none, yeah.
So I like that. I feel like I'm keeping up with it, and we keep pushing and pushing because it's moving so quickly. And the more we do, the more it is noticed. I'm noticing already. And I've been noticing it for a while. So I think that it will be, if I consistently stick with the stuff I've been doing and keep evolving it and working with Peeled and etc., that it will give me a good ROI. Yeah,
that's the goal. How do you optimize your time? How do you think about time? How do you divvy up your day? Like, how does that work for you? How do you prioritize? I got so many questions, so I apologize.
No worries. You know what? Realistically, anything client related comes first. And then after that, it's really just whatever I feel like, because
nice.
Because I'll do any task with complete focus. Yeah. But the one I'll get the most done if it's a task that I feel like doing, because obviously you're just into it. Yeah. So that's how I do it. And because I don't struggle with, I'm not a person who struggles with getting distracted and things like that. I don't usually need to be so structured with it. I just can do what I feel like, and I'll keep kind of moving through things. The only thing that does slow me down, I will admit, on a very regular basis that I need to work on is almost overthinking things and negativity. I admit that in many ways I'm fairly negative, at least when it comes to self-critique. And I used to think that's good because it keeps you improving. But I've learned, and now unfortunately it's become such a deep habit, but I've learned that it drains you badly. So that is the one thing that does. If I wanted to get more efficient in a big way, that'd be the one thing that would make a big difference if I wasn't so negative.
So I get it, but speaking your language a little bit more and speaking my language a little bit more, one thing that's made you so efficient is being a super critique on yourself. And now you're saying, well, okay, that's maybe not actually the most best approach, most efficient approach, but why wouldn't it be? How does it impede your professional development or personal development?
It's one thing critiquing, and it's another thing to get to a point where you don't recognize positive anymore. You don't celebrate wins. You only are focusing on what's wrong. And so it can get to a point where it goes past critique and just starts feeling like that nothing is ever good enough. Everything is basically a problem that needs fixing. And then when everything is always a problem, you start doing that year after year. And then it starts to become like, well, what's even the point? Sometimes everything's always going to be bad. It's just, now I'm really just working on keeping it as less bad, but ultimately it's always bad. And that's obviously going to not make me happy with myself or, et cetera. So that is an ongoing challenge.
How do you work through that?
I don't know. See, that's a great question. I don't know. And, I sometimes have moments where I, note this, and I might journal or do something to say what I'm grateful for, and it will switch my mood a little bit. The problem though is that once you're so ingrained in a thought, it's so uncomfortable to think in a different way that even if it feels good, you just want to go back to the easy way, which is just, I'd rather just have my same,
be a super critique,
be a super critique, even if it's negative. So it's just so hard to like get those uncomfortable habits back in place. It just feels so awkward.
Fuck. Damn, Shawn, I wish I had an answer for that one. Because you revert back constantly.
I know.
Constantly. And it's like any square that isn't perfect, any circle that isn't perfect, anything that isn't perfect.
And it's so much work because every time your natural state is to go back, it's like, oh my God, now I have to open up my journaling and spend the next 15 minutes trying to get myself back. It's like, oh, I'd rather just be miserable. This is easier. So I don't know. It's
the path of least resistance.
Yeah. I don't know. So that one haven't figured out, and I definitely struggle with that all the time.
Yeah, me too,
so
man.
Sometimes I even get jealous of people who are so positive, because I'm like, well, that's not. Why don't I get to be happy about everything? And I'll be like, I want
screw you guys.
It's almost like I want to go and be like, you should be unhappy because of these shortcomings that you have, so that they have to struggle too. I don't do that.
I'm bringing the ship down with me.
Yeah, exactly. If I'm going to be depressed, then everyone else has to be.
Cool, Shawn. Well, thank you so much. Where would you like to direct people? Thank you for being so vulnerable, but where would you like to direct people if people listen to this, other professionals or just the general public? Where's the spot? Where do you want to push them?
I'd say that my Instagram account is increasingly giving clients or possible, other business professionals, more of an insight about what I'm up to and
Very cool.
All about. So my Instagram or that'd be a main one.
Cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Shawn, thank you so much for coming on and being so vulnerable and open about your business and open about your personal life. And I love this medium because it allows that. And if I could say anything to you, it's to continue to find mediums like this and this long form and showing this other side of yourself. Because I think, yeah, it's helpful for you and probably healthy for you, but maybe even equally as important, it's super valuable to the world. So thank you.
And I appreciate you having me here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Shawn. Thanks for checking that out, guys, whether you're on YouTube for the visual experience or whether you're on the audio platforms, the podcast platforms, just for the audio experience. That was like something I didn't expect. I didn't expect Shawn to go that deep. I didn't expect things to get so vulnerable. I didn't expect that personality to come in here and act the way he did, but I was so pleasantly surprised, and so that was an honor. So thank you, Shawn. I want to shout out this week to Turf, because Turf actually, if you don't know Turf is like this active living studio, also an espresso bar, and also does the vegan meals and all these types of things. And there's someone in the community that's really growing, and every week we shout out someone that is adding to the community, adding to the culture here in Vancouver, and just try to build other people up, unpaid of course. So Turf, shout out to you guys. This is mainly because you guys just opened up a new location right by my work on I don't even know what street's on, West Georgia. I'm on like Burrard, but it's right by there. Anyways, had a couple lunches there. Shout out to you guys for expanding and building the community, the active living community here in Vancouver. We appreciate it, and we see you guys as always. Thank you, Shawn, for coming on. We really appreciate it. Also, if you guys are kind of new to this and you don't know what this is about, make sure to go back to our back catalog and find something that you're interested in. There's literally 60 plus episodes of stuff for you guys to check out. And on top of that, go back to the YouTube if you want to check out the visual experience. There's a ton of resources there and content that's actually worth your time, because we do value it. So, and as always, please subscribe, hit like, all that type of stuff that frankly just whizzes off the top of my head. So just know I appreciate you guys and continue to engage with the content, and it means the world. So until next week, see you guys.